Hey there, this is Matt. I am the host of the show. And just a quick warning, this week's episode contains some adult language. And by some, I mean quite a bit. So if you're listening with little kids in the car or you're listening at work, maybe not this time. It's probably not appropriate. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it nonetheless. And yeah, that's it. Let's do this.
You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And actually, generally, I record this in the same setting that I record all my interviews. It all works perfectly. And tonight, I am recording in a pillow fort, and I am a 33-year-old man who's built a pillow fort in my bedroom because my kids have friends over and they are loud. So hopefully this goes all right. But this week we have the opportunity, or I had the opportunity to talk with Glen de la Cour. And if you don't know who he is, he's the man who's behind the League One -10 blog. And it's a pleasure to have Glen back on the show. He was on originally way back on episode 16. He's been on once since then. But it's a pleasure to be able to talk to him. And he's been now writing the blog for 10 years. And that was really what prompted this discussion. That's a long time. That 10 years, there's a lot that's gone on in Saints at 10 years. I think we've all changed 10 years on. I was this year will be my 10th wedding anniversary. There's a lot that has changed in my life in the past 10 years. And so just to talk to Glen about all of those things, everything that's happened between the start of the blog and what prompted that all the way up till now, to talk about some of the posts that he's made, some of the events that he's witnessed, all of those things. It was really a pleasure to be able to do that. And it's an honor to be able to bring that to you here on the show. So if you're not familiar with Glen, you can get in touch with him on Twitter at L1, just the number 1. So L, the number 1, MINUS, and then the number 10. That's on Twitter. It's also League One -10.blogspot.com or .co.uk if you're in the UK. League is spelled out, 1 is spelled out, minus is spelled out, and then it's just the number 10. So that's all a little bit confusing. That's okay. You can just click the links in the show notes. It will take you to where you need to be. If you're not reading that blog, you're in for a pleasure, I think. So on this episode with Glen, we'll talk about his 10 years of writing, his generous kind of commitment and time and energy and effort to providing us with an honest and colorful analysis of Saints matches over that time. We'll talk about writing, starting the blog, talk a little bit about some Saints news. We'll take some questions from some of you listeners, and we will go over his League One -10 best 11. I asked him to put that together prior to us getting started. Then I forgot to ask him to tell me. And so we ended the show, actually, and then we had to come back and do it again. So, Glen, once again, thank you. We had to delay the start of the England-Cameroon kickoff, or we had to delay getting to it individually because I messed up. So I appreciate that very much. Luckily, that game just was a normal game. Nothing interesting happened. It just went off. England go through. Nothing to talk about there, I'm sure. What we don't talk about is there's no discussion of the Telegraph's article that came out or the restructuring of the board that Saints have. That all came out after we talked. So none of that, but we'll get to that on Friday's newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter yet, you can do that. Just head over to southamptondelivery.com, click on newsletter, and sign up, and you will get that in your inbox on Friday morning. So enough of this. Let's get to the interview with Glen de la Cour. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Glen de la Cour is the author of the League One -10 blog. And Glen, welcome back to the show, and congratulations on 10 years of writing about Saints through, I guess, all the ups and downs.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's nice to be on again. 10 years. That's it's quite mad how that's crept around. No, I never thought it would last 10 years. No, I never thought anyone would read it. And here we are. It's not actually 10 years to the day, but it's 10 complete seasons. So it's all good this end, and I guess I'll carry on next year.
Yeah, well, and people can read. You kind of did like a 10-year thing where you put up, I think, 20 posts that you either enjoyed or just look back on fondly. And my wife was trying to get me to do something similar for like the 1 or 2 year anniversary, and I just look back and go like, do I really want to go back and listen to all of these shows and figure? And I was going to do that. Did you have to go back and read through your blog, or did you have kind of things in mind that stood out to you beforehand?
No, I very much had things in mind. I mean, there were some significant things like the very first one, which was kind of an introduction, and the very first match. There's significant things like the Johnston Pace final, times we got promoted. And you've got things like statistics on, what your most popular post was and all that sort of stuff. So that all kind of fed into it. There were some significant matches that, that were significant in my mind, but not necessarily ones that would spring to other people's minds. And I didn't worry about being too exhaustive about the list. So, there may well be something I've completely forgotten. It was almost like the first sort of 20 that came to mind, rather than making sure I got every single memorable event covered in that list. So there will be others out there, and it's funnily enough, I found one that was significant from a personal point of view. It's the first game my son went to, and I've just been reading that one, and it's quite interesting to be able to sort of like dip in and read things like that from 9-10 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah. I think the last time we talked, and it's been a little while, but the last time we talked, I think you were going to Chelsea away midweek a couple of seasons ago. That was the next match, and I remember us kind of discussing that. And you were pulling him out of school a little early to get up there, and then we lost. It
was a standard away trip to Chelsea for us. Yeah. We went up there and lost, and that was quite an interesting game because. I can't remember how old he was at that time, probably about 12 or 13. Mm-hmm. And because it was an evening game, there weren't any kids his age there, or didn't seem to be any. It was all very sort of like hardcore blokes my age. So some of the language and humour that was going around that day was quite entertaining for him, especially when John Terry warmed up in front of us.
Oh,
there was that was a good day, and he was a bit knackered for school the next day, but no, that was a good one.
Yeah, we were able to go to the World Series game this past October, and my brother's a big Red Sox fan. My dad and my son are both Dodger fans, and my brother was by the time we got there, he drove a different car, and he had been drinking all day, and so they were trying to get my dad and I to move because my dad has like oxygen, is in a wheelchair, and so they were trying to get us to move down to that section. And they said, there's only 2 seats though. And I said, well, like, I just pointed to the steward and said, like, we'll see that little kid down there. She said, yeah. I go, I can't leave him. And I just pointed at my brother with him. That's not going to happen. She goes, oh no, you're right. That you can't do that because my brother's a nightmare. So, my brother spent, by the end of it, my brother was just yelling Yankees suck. And my son joined in. I was like, well, this is about how the day goes, but it's all right. So yeah, I know all about that stuff, but, I know that for the most part you, we want to talk today about the blog, and I know that you put together, or I asked you to put together, if you would be interested in kind of a best 11 over the time that you've been writing the blog. So we'll get to that stuff, and I have questions about the blog and just that, and then we'll get on to whatever's happening in the realm of news. Which, to be honest, it not much. It doesn't seem like a lot's happening, but anyway. But I know that for the most part you go to a lot of home matches, and I think last time we talked it was your son goes quite often. I think your dad as well. I could be wrong there, but anything Like, what's the normal kind of match day routine for you and everyone else involved?
Yeah, it's still the three of us going. My dad's now 74. He's been going since the 1950s. So lot of experience there. I'm not sure he can remember many of the games back in the 1950s, but he's been going for a number of years. So he usually drives around my house, and then I drive us in. So there's the three of us going. We usually park in a place called Woolston, walk across the Itchen Bridge, which became famous for a song about Rupert Lowe swinging from it about 12 years ago. It's famous for other things, but amongst those fans, it's Rupert Lowe swinging from the Itchen Bridge. I'm an old school football fan in that I want to get there a quarter of an hour before the game, watch the game, watch the players in the Saints shirts, give 100% for 90 minutes, clap the players off, and then go home. I'm not really interested in anything else. So that's what we do. But the thing that might change a little bit for next season is, like I say, my dad's getting on a bit now, so he's moaning about having to walk across the Itchen Bridge. So we could well be changing our routine a little bit and paying for a car parking space, which is not something I want to do, but as the old man will pay for it, I'm not too bothered.
What is that? I mean, do Saints charge you an arm and a leg to park near the stadium?
Yes, they do. There are 4 or 5, I think, allocated car parking sort of sites that I think it's about £10 a game, which is quite a lot. There are places that are cheaper that are not quite as close, but we'll have to see how that one works out. I might just make him walk still. You
can squeeze another season out of him.
Yeah, he could just be moaning because he likes moaning. So yeah, he could just be moaning, and come the start of the season, he'll be absolutely fine to keep walking across the Itchen Bridge. But
sure,
we'll play that. We'll see how that one goes.
You have to feel it out.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that moaning didn't just start when Twitter started. It's nice to know that was a thing before the social media seemed to bring it to light.
No, Dad's been doing it for years, and I've been pretty good at it myself since well before Twitter started.
I mean, going back to kind of the start of the writing, because obviously you were going to games before you started to write, and then you wrote about it, and we talked about it before. You were in Dublin and just needed something kind of to do, but also I think you mentioned that a lot of what you would read about the team was just about what was happening kind of off the pitch, and you wanted to kind of, I guess, rectify that. I mean, when you started to kind of write the blog, were people, was there anybody else talking about this? Because the forms of communication maybe were different too. I think you mentioned Saints Web was kind of the place to go, and how did people react initially to you starting to do that? Did anybody else jump on it right away with you, or was it just kind of you started doing it, and I don't know, how did that kind of work?
I wrote the first one, was just a little introduction about my sort of journey with Saints, which started in 1975, really. And I just wrote a little bit. It wasn't a particularly long piece, and I just put a little link on Saints Web to say, if you've got a few minutes, have a read of this. And the reaction was sort of like quite relatively positive. And I just tried to write in my own style, really. I mean, I think if I'd have had a load of feedback on that first one where everyone goes, no, this sucks, don't bother, then I possibly would have stopped. But I thought, no, I'll give it a go. And yeah, it's like anything. These things, they either build or they don't. And people either pick up on it or they don't. And it's it's been okay so far. But no, if no one picked up on it, then I dare say I wouldn't have bothered. But people seem to appreciate it. I got some positive feedback virtually straight away, and then it, and you realise you finished your first season, and okay, that went fairly well. We won the Johnston Paints list, and the following season we got promoted, and the following season we got promoted again. So it kind of built. It got exciting, and then we're in the Premier League, and So you kind of feel duty bound to keep going, and that's kind of what I've done, and here we are now, 10 years later.
Do you think if you would have started and it would have gone poorly, not the blog itself, but the season, and people weren't excited about the team, do you think you would have continued writing about it?
I think it maybe would have been slightly different. I mean, if we'd been completely rubbish, I just think it would have become just really taking the piss out of some. I mean, I did a lot of that anyway, but some of the, if you're having you've got a really bad team and you've got players that you just think should be playing on the park in front of two men and a dog rather than in a stadium full of people, then it's a lot easier to write comedy about it. And it would have been slightly different. I mean, some of the best sort of football related blog type posts, people when they write about what they term as the banter years within their club, where they have joke players or joke owners or ridiculous decisions being made. So I definitely think you don't have to be successful to be able to write about a club. But as it is, I mean, I'm struggling to think of a 10-year period in our history which would have been, as successful to write about. Maybe, from, I don't know, maybe 1975 to 1985, because that would have included the cup final win, getting promoted, finishing second in Division 1, as it was at the time. So that would have been an exciting 10 years. But in the main, the 10 years that I've been doing it, 7 years have been extremely positive. 1 or 2 have been dodgy, and the season we've just had, which was a half and half effort. So overall, I think in that respect, I've been pretty lucky because it's been mainly positive.
Yeah, I mean, talking to Ben from the Total Saints podcast and John from the Saints FC podcast, we kind of started and things just went downhill quickly. We've been through Puel, which you look at the final table and people go like, okay, people will maybe forget that a little bit, but the couple of seasons that followed that were just awful. And we've had about 6 months of positivity, but even then it was we were a little bit worried there for a while about how it's gone. So it's the 10-year period that when you picked it up, there was I don't want to say there was no sign of improvement at that point, but that was almost as low as things could have been, and it could have, but it could have gotten a lot darker really, really easily, well,
I mean, just before I started, I mean, there was a very real chance that the club could have gone out of business, and that it's funny looking back at that. I think that was kind of lost on me a little bit at the time. I don't think I really sort of like quite realised how desperate things had got. But then, Marcus Lever came in and it all changed. But certainly in terms of, performance on the pitch and league position, we were as low as we were likely to get. Bottom of League One, 10 points adrift, and that's you kind of felt it had to go forward from that position. And once Marcus Lever came in, it was always going to go forward from that position, and that's what happened. A few bumps on the road, but in the main, if you'd have asked anyone at that point in time, where will you be at the end of 2019 season? If you told them, okay, you'd have successfully fought relegation in the Premier League, most people would have taken it. But because things went incredibly well from when we had sort of Pochettino and Koeman, I think a lot of people have got a little bit. Expectations have changed somewhat and are somewhat unrealistic in some areas.
Yeah, absolutely. At the time when you started writing the blog, was there anybody else kind of doing it? Because I mean, now there are a number of blogs. Obviously, we have podcasts and websites, and it seems like a new news outlet is popping up kind of all of the time. And there are a couple of blogs that I read, yours being one, The Archer's Road End, when Ben does publish, and then George Ware's Cousin, which I guess we should not to take away from you and your accomplishment, but Chris decided to stop writing the blog as of this season and due to life changes. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that. Well, Chris, as far as I remember, Chris was around doing George Weah's Cousin 10 years ago, and it was one of the ones that I always liked. I mean, The Ugly Inside has been around in various forms since the late 80s.
Sure.
With, they started off selling fanzines outside the Dell.
Mm-hmm.
I remember buying them. I've still probably got a couple of them upstairs, but, they seemed to go quiet for a number of years. And then when Freddie got involved, it became a sort of like a presence on YouTube, and that's good. But at the time, so we're talking 2009, I remember George Weah's Cousin being around, but I don't remember too much else, to be honest. And you had the web forum, like Saints Web, with Twitter. Was Twitter around in 2009?
It was just getting started. It was a lot different.
It was before it became the playground of the idiot, which it kind of is now. But it's some very, very good stuff on there, but it's definitely the playground of the idiot. Going back to Chris, it's a shame he stopped, but I totally understand why. He went to, over the years, his sort of posts got more sort of spread out, sort of thing, but they were always worth reading.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think less is more, and that may be something that I do in the future. But for now, I'll carry on as I am.
And for the most part, over the past 10 years, you've gone almost every match, right? Like you've written about almost every match, or at least I think once a week. And I was kind of going through, adding up. You've got around 645 posts over the past 10 years, which is, that's a ton. That's a ton of writing to do. And you're not posting, the 250 word article that's taken from the Daily Mail headline, and so that's a ton of work to put into that, and then to make it entertaining.
They're all fairly long.
Yeah,
they're all fairly long, and I think that in itself may put some people off, because I think the general rule of thumb these days is that people have relatively short attention spans, so they're not going to be bothered with reading, over a certain number of words. So, but I don't know why it's like that. Maybe I just find it difficult to summarise. maybe I've got too much to say for myself. I don't know. But they all seem to be. I've definitely got too much to say for myself. They're all quite long, but no one's ever really commented on that. Maybe that's an interesting one. Are they too long? Should I try and cut them down? I don't know. But until people start moaning about it, then I'll stay doing what I want to do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I don't think you should. I think that I think the blog has developed it's very clearly your style, and
yes,
and people as I talk to people in different ask for questions and things, everybody kind of refers to you by name. Ask Glen, or do this or whatever, and so people know and people read, and I think it's usually kind of obvious when people come on my show and they say, I listened to all the episodes, and it's like quite clearly like you don't. But so it's pretty obvious to me that a lot of people are reading, and you can see, even you have the stats are on the site, so you can see kind of the visits and stuff. People are going to see this stuff. So I think it's I
think it's good that, not everybody likes every single post or comments on every single post, but when you do something like I did recently, which is to say, hey, look, I've been doing this for 10 years, then you get a few messages through from people that are really, really nice to read. And the ones I always like are the ones from abroad, usually America, Australia, Canada. It's people, writing in saying things like, well, you give it from a fan's point of view rather than from this sort of sanitized club website point of view, or the newspapers, or the standard sort of football websites. So I think there's a place for it, and it seems to particularly suit the Saints fan living abroad who wants to find something that's a little bit more real, maybe a little bit edgy. I don't know. But no, it's a good thing, and it is always nice to get those messages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things you wrote early on was, I think it was, you said, the Echo likes to write like they have the inside scoop, and they don't, and just period. And I read that and laughed.
Yeah, they do sometimes. The Echo has changed quite a lot over the 10 years. I think. Well, they didn't have access to the club for quite a long time when Cortese was there, and so they kind of went down the road of speculating on things, and I found that very irritating. But I do, of course, understand that they kind of had to write something, because if you put a decent Saint story on the back page of the paper, then the paper sells more copies. But they seem to go down the route of speculating, and that they don't do that so much now. So. And they obviously do have access to the club back now, so that's a good thing. But there seems to be a new thing with the media these days where teams have pet journalists. It's probably always been that way, but certainly the Echo and some of the journalists in the national papers, they seem to be almost doing the club's work for them a little bit on some of the transfer rumours and whatnot, which is the sort of thing that I, of course, always slack Liverpool off for doing. So we do it in a little bit more of a less obvious way, shall we say? But yeah, but no, I'm happy with the Echo, and their stories seem to have a bit of substance behind them these days.
Yeah, I think definitely the papers have changed, and I didn't always understand I live in a small town. We don't have a professional sports team or anything like that around, so our paper is mostly just a lot of people writing opinion pieces and yelling at each other in the in that section of the paper, which I just don't read. So when I started looking at newspapers and stuff, and I read the Echo's website pretty consistently, because they are one of those sources. It's basically them and Blackmore, and then the Telegraph. That's where you go if you want actual news, which is sometimes good. Sometimes I don't care enough to do it, but usually I do. Just looking back kind of over the past 10 years, I mean, is there a particular person or event or commentator or manager or match that just makes you that just pissed you off the most, that when you wrote about it, it was just the absolute, the rant of all rants or anything like that?
Yeah, well, you sort of primed me with this question before I came on. So I've had a quick think, and there are a few incidents that come to mind. The summer of 2014, which was when Pochettino left and Lambert went and Lallana went and Lovren went, Joe Rodriguez got injured. That was a pretty horrific time, and I got quite angry about that, especially the way Lallana behaved. Summer of 16 was similar, because we had a great team that season. Koeman left along with Pella, Mane, Wanyama. That was a bad time. You got the Virgil van Dijk episode, the whole, Liverpool tapping him up for ages and blah, blah, blah. And we all know how that one played out. And now he's won the Champions League. Tremendous. Great, really pleased for him. So they were the three sort of like areas that I got angry about. And the time where it was just sort of spirit crushing was the season with Pellegrino in charge, where I just felt like we were, sleepwalking towards getting relegated, and no one seemed to care too much. It was, that was a pretty grim time. But it wasn't really anger about that, because I think I just had all the life sucked out of me like everyone else did.
Yeah. That we'll get to some of the questions on that area, but that was a tough time to get on every week and find somebody who was excited to talk about anything, because just the things weren't great, and nothing seemed to be happening off the pitch to make it better. It was nothing was good. So I totally understand that aspect of it. And in the those summers when we have kind of mass exodus and things like that, like that is frustrating. And I was happy. I am happy in terms of when I started this thing. The results maybe haven't been as good, but I didn't have to talk about some of those things, which I'm not sure how I would have approached. So I appreciate you guys kind of putting that stuff in perspective. But is there a particular opposition player that you've enjoyed poking fun at over the years?
I've got a personal favourite at the moment, which is Callum Chambers, because I love Callum Chambers. Since he was with Saints for 12 years,
mm-hmm.
He then left to join Arsenal. Basically, as soon as he got in the first team, he played about 20 games for us. He left to join Arsenal as soon as he could, as soon as he possibly could. He's been gone for 5 years now. For 3 seasons of that, he's been playing 10 minutes here and there for Arsenal. For the other 2 seasons, he was on loan at Middlesbrough and on loan at Fulham and got relegated both times. So I love looking at the guy and thinking, what a career choice. But he's got a load of money in the bank. So he probably doesn't care too much. But I still find it disappointing. I know it's just a job to these guys, but I still find it disappointing that you grow up as a kid and it's your dream to be a professional footballer, and you see people making decisions that basically their motivation seems to be the richest player they can be rather than the best player they can be. That guy was potentially a very good player at 18. I think he's now probably 24, and he's not done anything with the first half of his career, apart from get relegated twice. And I dare say he'll be hanging around Arsenal reserves next season. I do love. I think I'm trying to get myself blocked from his Twitter feed, but he clearly doesn't read it. Doesn't read the replies, because I'd have been blocked ages ago. But yeah, there's whoever he signs for. If he does sign for someone else, put some money on him to get relegated.
All right.
Hopefully, it won't be us.
Oh, Jesus, that'd be. Well, yeah. If that happens, I'll go back in the archives and edit this part of it out, and we'll just pretend.
Yeah. So him, I like poking fun out. There are some players who play for other teams that I clearly just do not like. I'm not a fan of Mo Salah at all. Don't like him. There's a few obvious ones like Lallana, but he's not really a footballer anymore. And the same for Dejan Lovren, really. They're not footballers either. But I do one of the incidents I do remember from as being real fun was when Lallana came back to play against Saints for the first time, and he got dogs abuse from the crowd for 90 minutes, or for the 60 minutes that he was on, because he only played 60 minutes at the most. It was one of the only times where I've seen abuse from the crowd actually work, because you try and boo someone like Virgil van Dijk, and he doesn't care. No. he'll just stroll around and play his normal game. He won't care. Lallana was really bothered by it. You could tell, and you could tell he didn't want the ball. He wasn't making runs. It really affected him, so that was good. I enjoyed that. It just shows how weak he is as a character, really. So I don't know where he'll end up next season. He'll probably sit on his contract at Liverpool, I thought, before eventually ending up at Bournemouth when he's 32, 33.
Yeah, that seems to be what Bournemouth want to do. Klein's down there. Maybe he'll go join him. I wanted to tell you earlier. You don't have to watch your language here. This is fine. I feel like you've been tiptoeing around a little bit. You don't have to worry about it.
No, it's okay. I'm trying. I'm turning over a new leaf. I keep telling my son, you don't need to swear. You don't need to swear to make it point, which is a tough sell for me.
my kids as well.
Yeah.
This is people find it weird. This is the hour of my week where I don't curse. The rest of it is a disaster. Even as a teacher, I have trouble holding it together for 50 minutes at a time.
I'm not surprised.
But yeah, it's one of those things. I will not repeat the name that you call Adam Lallana from time to time, but I do really enjoy that. So thank you. I mean, a lot of things have kind of changed over the 10 years, and Twitter was just becoming a thing when you started. Social media has grown a lot. has that had an impact on your writing at all, or your decision to continue writing, or how you write, or especially just because people seem to, everybody's got a source, everybody's got inside knowledge and this stuff. Does that bother you at all, or do you just kind of do your thing?
No, I kind of do my thing. But what I found I was doing 2 or 3 years ago was that when there was a transfer window, especially the ones mentioned earlier that were disasters when we lost all the players, is that we've got kind of, on the web there's a thing called News Now, which gathers all the Southampton stories together. Okay. If that's the filter you put on it. So all websites, all the stories. So you obviously there's a lot of repeats on there, but I would find myself sort of like reading all of them and picking up on every single rumour, and then either getting annoyed about it or writing about it. And eventually I thought, I'm just adding to the problem here. I'm just, there's just so much, and so much of it is absolute rubbish, things that are made up. So I've kind of weaned myself off of those websites that grab, absolutely everything. And I just try and be a little bit more philosophical about it now and wait for it to happen. So I try not to write about, rumours and things like that. And now we've got this incident we've got this thing right now with Shay Adams from Birmingham, where, like a few days ago it was almost signed and delivered, and then it became there's an issue over the fee. And I just kind of think, let's just wait till he's on the pitch holding the shirt up. Yeah. And let's not worry too much about it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So, you can get snow blindness. There's just so much. If you want to read everything, I think your brain will explode. So I just try and pick and choose a little bit as to what takes my interest, and the best way to do that is just to wait for it to happen.
Yeah, just be a little bit more pragmatic over it. And yeah, I think there are a lot of people trying to make not that this is bad, but trying to make a name for themselves, trying to say, look, I can do this, and they want to break news and things like that. And the truth is, sometimes it's just a sea of the exact same headline over and over and over again, and nobody's got a source, and then it becomes a real, everybody thinks it's real, and it's really just a rumor by somebody on the internet with a Twitter account.
No, I know I'm getting on a bit now, but I can remember, like over here we had terrestrial television had 3 channels, and then it had 4 channels, and from what I remember, the quality was better. And now you've got 7 million channels, and everyone's got to put something on. And so the standard is ultimately going to drop. And it's exactly the same thing with the internet and the amount of websites there are. Everyone wants to have an exclusive, and everyone wants to, write or something that brings people to their particular, clicks on their website. Sure. So I think there's a lot of sensationalist rubbish out there. The stuff I really don't like is the devil's advocate stuff, where you get people who are just quite deliberately taking a contrary point of view. They can't possibly believe in what they're talking about because it's absolute rubbish. And they're just deliberately just trying to wind people up. And that sort of thing I find annoying. We've got a radio station over here called TalkSport, where they seem to specialise in that. They have, guests on who just talk absolute crap, and you cannot possibly believe that point of view. It's just absolute crap. You've been told to say that. Go away. I've had enough of it. So, yeah, that sort of style of media just leaves me cold, really, and I like to try and ignore it all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sometimes those videos come up on Twitter or whatever, and you listen, and it's like, I can't believe I just spent 2 minutes and 20 seconds listening to whatever that was, because it's terrible. And I'm glad you said that, because sometimes I wonder, like, did I miss the point? Like, did I miss something that happened in the world, and this is really where we're at now? But turns out not so much. You spoke a little bit of players going after money, and Chambers, Lallana. You can go down the list of people who have left for big money, but you haven't. You've never monetized the blog, and
no.
I think I am I am guilty of all of these things, and I'm legitimately asking questions. But what's the because we have a Patreon for this, and several other websites do that now, and what's the why? Is there a reason you haven't done it? Is there because it would be easy for you just to put an ad on the side of the page and call it good, but yet you haven't done that.
I think I might have put the Google ads at the side of the page a couple of times, but yeah, didn't make my millions from that. The short answer is I don't really know. I don't really know why. There is a bit of for the right reasons. I don't really want to compromise. And I dare say if you got sponsored by someone, then you would suddenly have to, stop calling Adam Lallana a wanker and all this sort of stuff. I'm not interested in being told sort of like what to do, and whether that would happen or not, I don't know. But no, I've never monetized it. I think 10 years ago, I probably earned a little bit more money than I do now, so maybe I'll have to rethink that. But I can't imagine I'd make most of it anyway. But it's of no real interest to me. I mean, it's something I sort of like do for fun, and it's something I do for my own amusement and for the amusement of people I read it. So people that read it. So I've never really sort of like seen the need. So when I spent 6 months unemployed not so long ago, then maybe I needed to rethink that. But I think my wife would like me to earn money from it. But yeah, there you go.
I mean, have you at any point been close to stopping writing? Was there a point at the end of a season or even mid-season where you just said I don't enjoy this? Or
definitely. Well, the original thing was when Lieber and Cortez came in. Cortez's first interview was talking about a 5-year plan, and the 5-year plan was to get us to the Premier League. In the event, we got there in 3, but he still talked about the 5-year plan, and I thought, well, I'll write this for 5 years, and then we've got a record of that 5-year plan. That was kind of my loose idea, was to do it for 5 years. And then I got halfway through the 6th season, and then I remembered I was going to stop after 5. So I messed that up a little bit. And I've always been a bit anally retentive, I guess, about don't stop halfway through, once you've committed to do something. So at the end of season 6, I kind of thought about it. But I think season 6 was Koeman's first season, so it had gone well and we qualified for Europe. And I think, well, I'm not stopping now because, things are going well. So carried on. But yeah, I think I've said before on a few occasions that the season under Pellegrino was like death warmed up, a lot of it. And I think that managed to bore to death virtually every sort of, certainly every match going Saints fan, because you just watch and nothing would happen. I mean, we've already touched on the fact that the stuff I write is quite lengthy, but in that year, there were large portions of games, we're talking sort of half an hour or so where absolutely nothing happened, because invariably we'd go 1-0 down and then we'd be too cautious to go for an equaliser. The other team were quite happy because they're 1-0 up, so they're just in a holding pattern and waiting for Saints to do something, and we weren't doing anything. And you could fall asleep for half an hour. I mean, sometimes I really felt like that's what had happened. I'd fallen asleep and I'd woken up and it's like, hang on, there's 42, 43 minutes gone. What's been happening? Nothing's happened whatsoever. And so you get to the end and you're like, I got nothing to write about. There's only so many times you can just say, it was boring.
Right.
The whole of the second half was complete shit. Nothing happened. And I think there was a couple of times where I did actually just give up. And, we kicked off the second half, and that was the most exciting thing that happened. The rest of the half was shit. Then the final whistle went, then we all went home. Happy days. Yeah. And that was kind of the way quite a few games were. But then, after, and then you kind of find alternative targets to write about. So towards the end of the Pellegrino time, I certainly started taking issue with a lot more individual players than I had done. Over lack of effort and just generally being crap. So I kind of got through it, but there was a stage, I think it was around Christmas of the Pellegrino season, where I just thought, you know what, I'm fed up with this. I think I got a game behind, so we had like 3 games in 5 days or whatever it was, and it got to in between the second and the third game, and I still had written about the first one because there was nothing to write about. It was so dull, and I think that was the time where I thought, you know what, I just can't bother with this. But me being me and not wanting to stop halfway through, I just kind of got my head down and got on with it. So I think I knocked out 2 games in one day, and then I was back on target again.
Yeah.
And then thankfully Pellegrino eventually got fired.
Seriously.
So, took him a long time. He did well. It took him a long time to get fired, but eventually he had to go.
There was a time when it was seemingly everything coming from the news outlets that I would trust and the club and everything else. The sentiment was that he was going to be there for the season no matter what. And to the point where I don't bet on anything. And I almost was like, well, the odds are so high that he'll get sacked. Like everybody's saying he should stay. Like, do I want to bet on him staying and just see, And then I was like, no, because I don't want that to happen. And I don't want to just, and I'm glad I didn't, because it would have been, I would have been really mad if I would have won a bunch of money, but he would have stayed and we would have gone down. That would have really, I don't know if I could have lived with myself after that.
There's too much at stake these days. And any club that is definitely going to get relegated, if they don't change their manager, they will always make a change February, March, in the season. I mean, we were undoubtedly going to get relegated, and there was absolutely no way that they could leave him in place. It's similar to the way that they couldn't leave Hughes in place last season.
Yeah.
You have to make a change at some point. Otherwise, you just, it's madness just to sort of carry on and expect anything to change. If you don't change things yourself, it's the definition of madness, isn't it? Expecting a different result from the same parameters. So, yeah.
I guess to kind of wrap up on the blog. I mean, for you, has anything? I mean, I have 2 more questions.
Yeah. Go.
One, how long does it take you to put together an average post for a match?
It always used to take about an hour. I do tend to write very quickly, so it always used to take about an hour. Now I think it's a little bit longer, and I tend to do it in sections. The sort of pre-match bit about the opposition and and what I think we'll get from the game, if you like. That I tend to write that in advance of the game. It's more sort of real then, rather than waiting until after the game and pretending you know what you're talking about. So I try to write that before the game, which that bit usually only takes about 20 minutes. The bit straight after the game, I always try and do straight after the game to keep it fresh, keep it real, if you like. What I'm feeling at the time. That can have dangers because you can overreact, as everyone does from time to time. If you come home and you've just been wound up by Liverpool fans singing Mo Salah flying down the wing whilst you've been sat in a traffic jam for an hour and a half trying to get away from the ground, that sort of thing. It's just, you're not going to sit at your computer and just write fuck off in large letters and overreact, and then you read it back later and you just think, oh my word, what is that? As an aside, that's one of the fun things going back to the old stuff is everything's there, so you can, and it's how you felt at the time. When I wrote about when Pochettino left, I was really angry about that. And I was like, he's going to fail at Tottenham. Everyone fails at Tottenham. And of course, I was completely and utterly wrong. So that's kind of interesting looking back and seeing your overreactions. But no, I'm fine with that. I think it's got a date at the top, so everyone can see when it was written.
Sure. And then, I mean, your dad started taking you to matches. He's been a fan for a long time. You started writing the blog. Your son you take your son now. Does he have any interest? Are you going to hand this off to him in a couple of years, or is he not interested?
Short answer to that one, no. He's not interested, though. Interestingly, he did have a careers interview at school the other day, and I think they talked to him about the things he was interested in, and one of the things that they suggested was that he went into sports journalism, which I found quite amusing because he's never shown any sort of interested in doing that. So you never know. He might be writing stuff. I don't think it'll be quite in the same style as his old man, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But I think he reads the stuff that I write, and he listens to a few sort of podcasts and things that I've been on, but no, I don't think he's ever going to be sitting down and writing stuff like this. It's hard to tell. I mean, he's only 14, so
sure.
Who knows what he's going to be doing in 3 or 4 years? Because people change a lot in those times.
Yeah. Do you ever wonder if his teachers or whoever, some people are at school or whatever, read the blog? Does that happen?
He changed football teams. 2 years ago. He's been playing. 1 year ago. He's playing for a new team for a year, and one of the guys who stands on the line, one of the other, I think he said he might be a cousin or a brother of one of the players. I'm not sure, but he started talking to me, and it became apparent that he knew of the blog but didn't know it was me.
Oh,
that wrote it. So that was quite interesting. So I'm playing with that one at the moment.
Okay.
And we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see how that one comes out. How that one turns out. But no, I don't think any of his teachers. I've certainly not heard of any of his teachers. Having said that they've read it, but I guess some might have. But who knows? He hasn't got in trouble for it yet. So that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know he'll be all right. Well, I guess we'll find out if the guy that stands on the sideline knows of this podcast or not. You may have just outed yourself, but I doubt it. I doubt it.
None of his teachers have said, tell your dad he's a dick or anything like that. I guess it's more likely if they support other clubs. But
yeah,
maybe it'll happen one day.
I mean, just briefly on some team news, you talked about the Che Adams thing and just kind of waiting for it to happen. I mean, if it happened, would you be happy with that signing? Is that somewhere you feel like we could use some? Sorry to jump into this, but I feel like that's somewhere we can improve, and that would be a good deal for the club.
Yeah, we definitely need a striker, and I've always liked, because I'm a bit traditional. I like taking players from the Championship. If they've done well there, they've got something to prove. He fits the profile that Ralph wants, as in young, quick, fit. He's got a bit of a track record at a lower level. Ralph obviously thinks that he can make the step up. So it's on the face of it. Now, I don't know much about him. I've seen highlights of the goals that he scored last year. He looks like the sort of player that could complement the other players that we've got. So I hope it comes off. But as I said before, if it doesn't, it doesn't. It has to be the right deal for the club. We've made some shocking signings, either in the last couple of years, either overpaying or buying players that turn out to be not very good. So I'd rather they took their time and got it right. And if for argument's sake, I mean, it's been quoted that we've bid 14 million. For me, that's about right. But the price of players in the Championship seems to be skyrocketing. So if Birmingham are suddenly turning around and saying, well, no, actually, we want 22 million for him, then, I'm perfectly happy for us to walk away and move on to the next target. So if it happens, it happens. But, we need to be a bit careful about where we spend our money and how much of it we spend, because as has been established, we don't have a great deal to throw around.
Yeah, there's only so much of it. And yeah, I think we all get excited about some of these guys, and we want them to come in, and I think that's totally fine. But I think the club has to approach it. They can't approach it you can't walk into a negotiation and say we'll do anything we can to take this guy, because I don't think there's not very many of those players out there, that you would do that for. So
and we're not desperate at the moment. It's not like when we signed Carrillo in January when we were desperate.
Very true.
January's a horrible transfer window, and you end up paying 25% or whatever, or 50% more than what you should be paying. And this is the summer. It hasn't even really got going yet. I mean, July the 1st is when all the contracts tend to end, so it tends to ramp up a lot in July. So there's certainly no panic yet. But I just hope the club don't panic, and I don't want us to get our pants pulled down again and we end up with players who don't want to be there for whatever reason, or ones that we just pay too much money for.
Yeah, I think I'd take players who are maybe less skilled that really want to play for us, rather than guys who are coming there just for the money, because I think that shows through, especially for the fans that are there week in, week out. You can see it. It just doesn't look good.
Yeah, we've got a couple of players already that no names, I'm sure you can guess who they are. Who I look at them and I think they think they're too good for this. They think they're too good for Saints. They should be playing for someone better, and players like that. I always kind of wonder if they're really sort of putting it in. And Saints need everybody putting 100% into every single game. Otherwise, we're going to be down near the bottom again next year.
Yeah.
Ralph can only work with what he's got, and if the minimum requirement is for players to put in 100%. But I think at least with this manager we've got now, it won't be tolerated. If players not putting it in will just not be tolerated, and so I'm hopeful.
Yeah. I think under Hasenhüttl, the guys that are going to go and the guys that are going to be in the team, I don't think we'll be that surprised as to who gets to stick around and who gets to play. And I think the guys that they're going to make it through that level of training that Hasenhüttl is going to require of them. I think that there's no faking it at that point.
No.
I don't think training is just rolling out the balls and saying, run around a little bit more. I don't think that's how it's going nowadays, which is good. We do have some questions from listeners. If you got a couple of minutes, is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So people can send in questions a number of ways. One thing that patrons get for supporting the show is they get priority for having their questions answered on the show, in addition to having an additional chat that we have that's private just between us, and an additional episode per month. We'll start with Kevin. Kevin McGee says, question for Glenn. Would he go through those relegations again to see a similar rise? For many years after League One, we just got better and better. So would you have us go down to have kind of that meteoric rise again, or do you just kind of want to? You don't want to do that? You don't want to go through that again?
No, I don't want to go through it again. It's a tough one. I know what he's saying, and I appreciate where the question's coming from. It's tough in the Premier League because there's only so far you can go. We're never going to be the top 6 or the top 4. So we touched the glass ceiling when, as they call it, when Pochettino was there and when Koeman was there. And if things continue and we don't get relegated, we're always going to be sort of around the 7th to one place above the relegation zone area. So I can see why people would think it's not particularly exciting, but getting relegated is not fun. There are some silver linings that can be had from it, in that hopefully you get rid of some of the players that have been underperforming, but you always tend to lose the ones that were decent for the obvious reason that they were decent. So that is difficult. Getting relegated is not fun at the end of the day, unless you can bounce straight back. But it didn't work with us last time. We went down again in 2 years' time. 2 years later, I don't kind of fear it, because there would be enough positives of a season in the Championship. But I don't think anyone really wants to go through actually getting relegated. So a long answer to a short question, but no, I'll stay where we are. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Justin asks, how many swear words do you delete before posting a blog, and how many times did you just copy and paste a match report during the Puel Pellegrino era? And
how many swear words do I delete? Fucking none. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. It is what it is. How many times did I cut and paste? No, I never actually cut and paste, but I did actually feel like I did think about it once. I did think about writing full review of match, just see last report. I almost did that once, but no, I never actually did the cut and paste job. But no, the swearing thing, that is an interesting thing, actually. I didn't swear too much right at the start. Right at the start of the blog, I was consciously trying not to, and I thought, no, this isn't fun at all. let's start littering it with hundreds of swear words. But no, it's not something that I police too much these days.
I was going to say, there tend to be other internet kind of stories, and they realize that if they put the word sex or the F word up in the title or near the top, that those stories tend to get picked up more and more and more based on what people search. So, putting those words in there tend to be all right. So I think you're doing okay there. I honestly can't remember why I decided not to just go out, because my mouth is filthy. And I have to sit here and really be aware of it, doing it. And I think mostly it's just because my kids are listening in the other room sometimes.
Yeah.
We don't even have a window. We have a curtain up. And so I don't know who's on the other side of the curtain right now, but I can't say some of the things that I would like to say and describe things in the proper manner, because they sometimes wake up super early and just don't tell me because they're being nice, because they know we're recording. But I do enjoy the blog. It makes me. I was sitting yesterday. I was telling you, we were sitting at the skate park. My son was doing his thing, and I was reading through some of the posts on the blog from the 20, and I was just burst out loud laughing. I looked like I was the one guy not on drugs laughing for no reason in the corner of the skate park, which is always good.
I think maybe in a podcast, because it's audio, it can be played out loud, so it's maybe not too cool. And you might have kids that are much younger or much too young, hearing the content if it's lit up with swear words. I think with my stuff, it's one person reading it. No one's reading it out loud. Though there has been a couple of occasions where I have kind of thought about it a little bit. I think when my son was about 11, one of his mates just said to me, "Oh, I read your blog on the whatever match it was last week," and I'm thinking, 11, great. He's going to go. He's going to go and tell his mum and dad that he read about what what my son's dad said about Adam Lallana, and that's. I had a brief moment where I thought about it, and then I thought, fuck it, and carried on.
I think it's great. Charlie Robinson sent in a question from Twitter. He says, "Hi Matt, please ask Glenn when he will be joining Match of the Day, as we need a summarizer who doesn't hold back. He would be brilliant at describing the situation as it is, unlike those in the studio, and also thank him from me for the brilliant article he writes. Love his honesty." So that's just a shout out to you. And I'm sure you've gotten a lot of those, and a lot of us appreciate what you do. So that's from Charlie there.
Yeah, thanks. That's a nice comment, Charlie. Thank you very much. When I'll be joining Matt of the Day? Well, when in the parallel universe I've had a 15-year career as a professional footballer, then maybe that'll happen. But I can't see me replacing Mr. Shearer or Ian Wright at any point in the near future. But it would be amusing. Yeah. I did read a thing where Alan Shearer said that if you swear on air, you're basically off the job.
Really?
So I think I might find that a bit of a challenge.
Well, you get a weekend at least. Although for me, the more nervous I am, the more likely I am to do it, which would not be great, because I'd go on there and I'd drop it immediately. First day of school is always an interesting one. First day of classes. Christian Candler asks, if there was one moment you could go back and write about again, what would it be?
I mentioned it earlier when Pochettino left. My overreaction was horrible. So maybe I'd like to rewrite that one. But no, it doesn't really bother me. Once it's out there, it's out there. And I'll just if the question refers to before the blog, a time before the blog started. I mean, I have toyed with the idea of watching the 1976 Cup final right the way through, because I've got it on a DVD, and writing a blog as if I was there at the time. I was only 7 or 8 years old at the time, so I can't write it in the style of an 8-year-old. But I'd be interested to do maybe a historical match. and if you've got the whole 90 minutes on DVD to watch, then I guess you could do that. So, but I'm enjoying having a break at the moment, so I'm not looking to make any extra work for myself.
Sure. And I think, like, I mean, you think back to just the promotion or the JPT final, or would you be willing to just I guess just to relive it a little bit? I think maybe any moments you'd like to relive that you've written about.
The promotion day when we beat Coventry 4-0 to go up to the Premier League, that was brilliant. It was a thoroughly decent day. I'd like that feeling again, but then I don't want to get relegated. I think the closest we get to that would be to actually winning one of the cups, which we got close to doing a couple of years ago. So, that League Cup final, I'd like that to have turned out different. When Gabbiadini scored to make it 2-2, I actually felt for 10 minutes that we were actually going to win. This genuine belief. The whole sort of crowd went absolutely mad, and I genuinely thought we were going to win. And it was like, how brilliant this is going to be. And of course, it didn't happen because no one decided to mark the 6'5" centre forward stood in the middle of our penalty area on his own. Zlatan, you might have heard of him. Let's leave him on his own, see what happens. I'd like that moment to have turned out differently. And I'd love to relive that 10 minutes. But there you go.
Yeah. Last one. And Oscar Dean asks, top 3 priority signings. I don't have those, but the top 3 to let go. You think there are 3 players that need to leave, and we don't have to answer this one if you don't want. We can call it good. It's totally up to you.
No, I'm quite happy to answer that one. I mean, the 3 to let go, we need to get rid of the people who stink the place out, either through attitude or just not being very good. I think Cedric definitely needs to go. I have it on quite good authority that he's a bit of a pain in the backside behind the scenes. He needs to go. Wesley Hoyt needs to go because he's shit. And he's also apparently, well, it's not apparently, you can hear from his interviews, he's extremely arrogant, and he just needs to go. And I think Ralph hasn't called it straight away with him that I don't want this player around the club. Off you go. But unfortunately, we only got him out on loan. So the club, Celta Vigo, who took him, they'll have seen him play now, so they all want him. We've got to find a club somewhere who thinks that all Dutch centre halves are brilliant, and they're signing the next Matthias de Ligt or Virgil van Dijk. We won't tell him that Wesley is absolute crap, but he needs to go. A third one who needs to go, Charlie Austin needs to go. His attitude, his level of fitness, his general usefulness, he needs to go. And there's a few others as well. I mean, the only rumour I've seen about players leaving is Jordi Classic, and if he's a bit of a lightweight non-entity really. He's been hanging around. I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw someone posted that in wages and transfer fees, he's cost us something like 20 million euros.
Oh, jeez.
I think we had, one season out of him when he was injured most of the time. And, that goes back to the point I was making earlier about, we want to get things right. We don't want to have our pants pulled down with players who are not suitable for the English game or end up costing us too much money.
Yeah.
But I think on July the 1st it will start kicking off and the market will start moving. And some of these players who need to leave will leave.
Yeah. And unfortunately the wages we agreed to pay some of these guys have really made it difficult for us to move them on, because they just can't. Very much so. People, other places outside the Premier League, which is where most of these players probably belong, unfortunately, they just can't afford it. So. It is what it is, I guess. At this point, we made our bed. We got to lay in it a little bit. But you mentioned you're enjoying having a bit of a break. I appreciate you coming on the show. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it still feels like a break. I don't know. I don't know how everybody feels different about coming on and doing stuff like this. So
well, no, this is cool because it's different to what I normally do. So that's absolutely fine.
All right.
I can talk all day. That's no problem at all.
Will you be? Obviously, this won't come out till Tuesday, and we're talking Sunday. But will you be watching the Women's World Cup match? England's playing tonight.
Yeah, it kicks off in about 10 minutes. Actually, I will be watching it. I watched the last World Cup, and they did relatively well in that, and I'll watch tonight. I've not been particularly impressed with them. They won all 3 games without looking decent, so they're obviously either keeping the powder dry for the knockout matches, or they're just not very good. At the moment, they look like the sort of team that will make the quarterfinal and then get beat, much like the men's team normally do. But yeah, I hope they do well. There's no negative side to it really. I hope they do. I hope they do well, and it'll be great for the women's game in this country if they did manage to get to a semi-final or a final. But as I say, at the moment I can't really see it, but I think they'll win today. But I can't see us challenging your team, put it that way.
Well, I was going to say the U.S. women's team won it last time. They didn't look good for a lot of the tournament, and then they just kind of turned it on late, and maybe that happens. But I did get a chance to see the women's team, the England women's team, play at St. Mary's when we were over there, and they looked okay. Like you kind of the way you describe it is correct. There's not they can get wins, but they're not impressing people, and I think part of it is the coach doesn't really seem to know who the best 11 is, and there's differences over the players feel a certain a certain formation fits them better. The coach has one, and it doesn't quite seem great, but hopefully I think it means a lot to the women and women's football in general if in England if the women can do well in the tournament. So we'll be rooting them on, and hopefully it looks like if the U.S. get through, they'll have France probably in the next round, which will be that'll be difficult, but we'll see. Maybe we'll I don't know what'll happen if England and the U.S. meet later on. I don't know how I'll feel about it, but actually I do know how. I'll be full kit USA at that point, but it'll be all right.
Fair enough. No, expect no different, but yeah, we'll see. That's a long way off. But now I'll be watching England in a bit, and hopefully they'll get through to the quarterfinal.
Absolutely. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for choosing to start the blog, for giving it the name you did, for being yourself, which I think is, in a world where everybody kind of gives us the sanitized version of everything. You do a wonderful job of giving it from the view of a fan who's there and who is both knowledgeable and being real. And I think I speak for a lot of other people who read, appreciate it. We find humor in the dark times and also in the good times. And it's a pleasure to talk to you. It's a pleasure to, it's a pleasure to have you on and just to be a part of the community that is Saints. And you make a big part of that. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for all your kind words and support, and that's good. And we'll continue, and no doubt we'll speak again.
Absolutely. And people can find you on Twitter at L1-10, and
Indeed.
The blog is league1-10.blogspot.co.uk, and the links are in the show notes so people can get there. So, Glenn, will go enjoy England. Don't let me hold you up, and I will talk to you soon.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I forgot the question, so we're going to come back for a second, and I don't know how the hell I'm going to work that in. Shit. Okay. So one more question I wanted to ask you is, we put together, I asked you to put together a League 1-10 team. And so just to finish off the show, can you run us through the team that makes your League 1-10 team over the time you've been running the blog?
Yeah, sure. So 10 years. Some of these won't jump out the page at people. Some of them will. So I'm not interested in an argument over this. I've chosen some of these players for sort of personal reasons. Some of them because they're very good players. Some of them because they sort of came along at important times. Like the goalkeeper, I've chosen Artur Boruc as the goalkeeper, because in my opinion, when we got to the Premier League, he was the first goalkeeper that we had that I thought, this guy is actually the correct level. Goalkeeper is a hugely important position, sets the tone for the whole thing. I loved Artur Boruc. He had a mistake in him, and he was a complete lunatic. It's great. I won't hear a bad word said about him. I thought he was great, and I thought he was very unlucky to get bombed out when he did, when the club signed Fraser Forster, because I don't think he'd done anything wrong. But he went. Honourable mention to Fraser Forster, who, when Koeman was here, was great, but it's gone downhill a little bit since then. But so Artur Boruc in goal, right back. It's a difficult one. We haven't been blessed in that area with a succession of fantastic players. So the best I'd go for is Nathaniel Klein, who again stepped up from. He was playing in the Championship with Crystal Palace, and he signed for us, and he stepped up and played well for a number of years, disappearing off to Liverpool, that well-trodden path. Left back, Ryan Bertrand. I find it quite disturbing that he's been linked with moves away. He's still our best left back by a mile, and he's been a superb player for 4 or 5 years we've had him. Central defence, the best partnership we had was Font and that guy with the silly hair who plays at Liverpool now, Mr. Van Dijk, just a different level. Knew he was too good for us, basically, within about 5 minutes of watching him. Just thought, we're not going to hang on to this player for very long. He is so good. And I've tried not to be too bitter, so I'll go with Van Dijk. And Jose Font made everybody look good, who played next to him.
Absolutely.
I think that's being appreciated now. Again, I'm overlooking the sort of dickhead mode he went into when he won the Euros with Portugal. He signed for us. He dropped a division to play for us, and that was a huge signing at the time, right back at the start. Again, you know, you build a successful team from the back, and he was a massive part of that. A magnificent player for us, and he could probably still do a job now.
Yeah, and not to interrupt you there, but I think Puel ruined him when we went to the Europa League, having gone through all that with him. From dropping down and coming all the way up through the leagues and kind of leading the team, for Puel not to play him in the Europa League. I think that had to be the final straw maybe for him.
Yeah, possibly. I think, as I alluded to, he didn't do himself any favours, but
sure.
With his, sort of almost demanded a transfer when he, as soon as he got back from the Euros. But
sure.
In some ways, I can kind of understand why he did that. He was 32. He was probably thinking, I've only got 3 or 4 years left. I need to go and play for a big club.
Yep.
And it's kind of worked out for him. But as with all these players who leave, it's the way you do it.
Yeah.
It's the way you do it as much as actually doing it. I mean, no one gives Sadio Mane or Luke Shaw a hard time when they come back. Whereas there are others who do get a hard time, and there's a very obvious reason for that. But yeah, Font and Van Dijk. Into the midfield, I've gone for sort of 2 central midfielders. When we had Victor Wanyama and Morgan Schneiderlin in the centre of midfield, that was the time when I thought we are so solid. You know, we had 2 centre backs who were solid. Usually it was either Font and even Lovren. Font and Lovren looked good together when they had Wanyama and Schneiderlin in front of them. Those two. They used to boss games, and we've always struggled in midfield a little bit. I feel Højbjerg has come through now, and he's going to be an excellent player as long as he sticks around. But Wanyama and Schneiderlin for me were 2 players that I thought were excellent for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gone a sort of 4-2-3-1 formation. The next bit was the difficult bit, which is the 3 behind the striker. So gone Sadio Mane, who's just an electric player, great player for us. Had his ups and downs a little bit. He seemed to take a holiday at Christmas whilst still being on the pitch. He used to seem to struggle a bit with that, but he made a huge difference for us. Just his pace frightened the hell out of teams, and created space for other players. Next player along, a steady one, Steve Davis. Steve Davis, a brilliant player for us for 6 or 7 years. Probably stayed a year too long, but he was excellent. And in that team that Pochettino had, where he played in that midfield 3, just behind the striker. He did a great job there. Never scored a lot of goals, but just he was one of those players that enabled everyone else to do their thing, and he was great. This one will surprise you. It's Adam Lallana, who was, let's face it, he was really, really good for us for a few seasons. A massive, massive bell end, thick idiot, thick as mince, but on the pitch, he did the job for a number of seasons. So he has to be in there. And up front, it's a straight shootout between Ricky Lambert and Graziano Pella. I thought Graziano was a fantastic player, but you cannot look past Ricky Lambert for his importance. We paid £1 million for him, which in League One terms was quite a lot of money at the time. But the journey he went on, culminating with scoring on his England debut and getting in the England squad for the World Cup. That's something else. So Ricky Lambert up front. So you've got Boruc, Klein, Bertrand, Font, Van Dijk, Wanyama, Schneiderlin, Lallana, Davis, Mane, and Ricky Lambert. There you go.
I think that's great. I think that team would that team in those years, probably when we remember them playing their best, would definitely give people some trouble.
There's a few honourable mentions I'd like to make as well.
Okay.
Toby Alderweireld, brilliant for a season. Dean Hammond, vitally important player in the promotion years for setting the standard. Not the greatest ability wise, but he was 100% every game, and you could tell that everyone else, sort of tried to keep up with him. Nathan Redmond has got, had a brilliant season last season. I've got a feeling he's just going to get better and better. Jay Rodriguez for one season was absolutely superb, and then unfortunately got injured. And another left field one, Billy Sharp, vitally important for the season that we got promoted out of the Championship, because he came in January and scored about 10 goals, and that was very important for getting us over the line. All
right. Well, yeah.
Actually, substitutes.
Absolutely. If I not to throw this at you, but who would manage this team?
I put a question on Twitter about, and I didn't word it terribly well, so I've got a lot of silly responses, but who's been the best manager of the last 10 years was kind of what I meant to say. I'll go with the majority here, and they kind of went for Pochettino as being our. So I'd have to say him with Nigel Atkins as assistant, but I'd go with Pochettino, and he wouldn't have a place for some of the great players we've had, like Mayuka and Whammy and Paul Watton and people like that. I started putting together a dreadful 11, but I got about 6 players in and then got bored with it. So no, it'd definitely be Pochettino as the. I'm not including Ralph in that conversation because he's still there, but and he's only been here 5 minutes. So no, I definitely say that over the last 10 years, Pochettino has been our most impressive manager. Just wish he'd stayed a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah. Well, for real now, I think. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And sorry to have to bring you back on. I can't believe sorry.
That's all right.
But anyway, Glenn, thanks again. And we'll do this, and I'll be, we'll do this again.
No problem at all.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks goes out this week to Glen de la Cour, who writes the League 1-10 blog. You can find him on Twitter at L1-10. You can also get in touch with him at league1-10.blogspot.com or .co.uk, depending on where you are listening. There are links in the show notes to get there. So get in touch, get reading, and get caught up on some Saints news with a little bit of a twist. And once again, Glenn, congratulations on reaching 10 years of writing through the ups, mostly ups, and a little bit of the downs, and everything else that has happened in the last 10 years. Thank you so much for doing what you do. I personally do appreciate it, and thank you for giving me your time and being willing to answer some of my ridiculous questions while we were here. If you want to follow this show on social media, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Instagram and Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There are all those links and more on the show website at southamptondelivery.com. One of the things you can do there is subscribe to the show so you don't miss future episodes. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. There are tons of links and other helpful information on the show website. Once again, that's southamptondelivery.com. If you're already subscribed to the show and you'd like to help out a little bit more, you can leave a review of the show wherever you listen. That helps spread the word to other people. It gives them a pretty good idea. Unless you're the guy who didn't enjoy it and who left a 1-star review, thank you for your honesty. I'm trying to improve. Hopefully there's enough personality for you right here. Special thanks also goes out to all of the members of the Patreon community. You guys are really keeping this going. I really do appreciate it. I had to buy new batteries this week, so $30 on batteries. That should get me through the next couple of months. So thank you guys for that. You did that. So the fact that you can hear this right now, because the batteries you bought allow me to do this. If you'd like to join the Patreon community to help support the show, you get access to a private Patreon-only chat. You get priority each and every week for having your questions answered on the show. And patrons at the $5 a month level get an extra podcast per month. Special thanks goes out also to the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Matt from the page does the logo for the show. Our official partner is the Southampton page on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Jay, who runs the page, has been a huge help. But follow along on the Southampton page for all your Southampton FC news and needs, because you won't get it here. It only comes out once a week in the podcast and another time in the newsletter. But Southampton page is doing it each and every day, keeping you up to date on all things happening around the Southampton Football Club. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. That does it for this week. And once again, thank you so much for listening and subscribing and rating and sharing the show. I really do appreciate it. It wouldn't be possible without any of you. And once again, congratulations to Glen. We really do appreciate everything that you've given us as readers. And hopefully over the next 5 or 10 years, you continue to find new ways to call Adam Lallana a bunch of things that I truly do appreciate. So I will be back on Friday with another edition of the newsletter. We'll be back next week with another show. But until then, remember that together, we march on. Now I have to clean up the pillow fort.